Roberta comes to us from Florence, Italy, where she is the chief art restorer at our sister institution in Florence, Studio Art Center International, colloquially known as SACI. And Bowling Green students have a great opportunity to study for a semester, a year, or even a summer term in Florence at SACI, and to study under the direct supervision of professors like Roberta Lapucci. Roberta is, of course, internationally known for her research on Caravaggio, and let me please help me in welcoming Dr. Lapucci.
Thank you for the opportunity of speaking to an American audience. So important for me. Now, let's go on. Because 45 minutes are too little to explain what I want to talk about today, Caravaggio and the science of light. So I have divided this presentation. There are really 45 minutes at the beginning more on the historical part, but recently I've developed more on the photographic process he could have used, so there is another 10 minutes if you're interested, or who is interested, eventually to explain chemically how this photographic process could have worked. Now, the beginning of this lecture sees the debate, Italian against more than versus Anglo-Saxons, on who has talked first about optics, Caravaggio, camera oscura, camera ombrosa, camera lucida. And as a matter of fact, we started earlier, like with Roberto Longhi and his 1952 monography on Caravaggio, with Vasco Ronchi in his history of optical techniques, with Spezzaferro analyzing in his article of 1971 all the phenomena linked to Cardinal del Monte, one of the main protagonists of this process, Alessandro Parronchi and so on, but you develop more. Anglo-Saxon and particularly English work has really taken the path. We were historically studying, Anglo-Saxon work was practically experimenting this field, particularly, as you know, with David Hockney. You probably know, or know the great artist David Hockney, who started really entering laboratories and trying to make experiments showing not only for Caravaggio but for many, many artists. From the, he poses a date of 1285, beginning of use of lenses and mirrors and optics in art, and he went on till today, making a huge wall with all the possible potential optical-based artists who were more realistic or more sharply defined than others, and writing a fantastic book in 2001, Secret Knowledge, in which for the first time the idea that optics and art were really linked for the creation of masterpieces. Unfortunately, all the Italian, because art historians thought that not passing through the long steps of drawing, but just projecting and copying and putting the color there, you lose mastery. And Hockney recorded a BBC movie with a t-shirt in which there was written, "The camera oscura doesn't paint." So one thing is to project an image with a slide projector on a wall, and the other, some of you probably are artists, is to make a painting like Caravaggio quality. We can all try, we'll find our limits immediately, okay? And so the last, not the last, one recent book I published in 2010 is Caravaggio and the Science of Light, which gives the title to my presentation today. One now is coming out, is Caravaggio Photographer, and as you will see, more things will be shown. The symposium, so Hockney in the garden of SACI, Studio Art Center International, setting up composition similar to Caravaggio composition, like with glasses, general glasses, with carpets on the table, as you can see. And there were two parts, a theoretical part at the Magliabechiana Library, which joins, and it was just on purpose chosen because it joins the Uffizi Gallery, where art is exposed, and the Museum of History of Science, where all the ancient instruments, lenses, mirrors, and whatever else could have been used, the telescopes by Galileo and so on, were present. So it was just the right place where to invent a symposium on the link between optics and art. And we projected within Camera Obscura, at the symposium, excuse me, there were John Spike, Mina Gregori, Filippo Camerota, the director of the Museums of Science, Charles Falco, who followed the thesis of Hockney, so now it's called Falco-Hockney thesis, or Hockney-Falco, and other artists. And this is a sort of Camera Obscura we invented with just a curtain, and with, as I told you, different combination of mirrors and lenses. Some were giving us, inside the Camera Obscura, left to right images. Some gave us the perfect reverse image, upside down, left to right. We'll discuss it in a second. And obviously, we noticed that glaze pottery and armors and figures and carpets are the things that project the best. So not by chance, certain things have been chosen, certain subjects and certain objects have been chosen by Caravaggio. All this became a big noise in Italy. In 2010 was the celebration of the year of the death of Caravaggio, so some friends of mine, photographers, a group of young photographers, Giuseppe Zanoni, Giacomo Pietrapiana, and Anne Grieg, Camilla Sponder, executed a series of photographs, same size as the painting of Caravaggio, same models, same situation of life, but contemporarily reinterpreted. Using the leading persons of Porto Ercole, as Caravaggio used to do. No? He chose the persons from the street. So it was funny because you went to this exhibit and then you went to buy the newspaper, and the newspaperman was one of the personages of the photographs, no? Which was another effort that contemporaries of Caravaggio must have tried to see their friends inside the churches, inside the big altarpiece of the churches. For the separate Emmaus, they obviously 1 minute on this slide because it was funny to see how they reinterpreted. Now, Christ has turned into a mafia boss. Okay. The basket of fruit of the Ambrosiana, which was the language of the Counter-Reformation, no? The gift to Cardinal Borromeo explaining the new language that the Church imposed or suggested with the Counter-Reformation diktat, is the television of 1950s, which is our modern language. Instead of the frugal food, now we have monopoly. Instead of the wine and the bread, the sacrifices of Christ, we have plastic cups. And instead of the beggarman, the helper of the beggarman, St. James, with the shell to give water to the poor, the shell is on the table with a cigar on top, okay? Not only, but underneath here, you hardly can perceive it because there is too much light here, but this is the Madonna of the Nativity of Palermo, which is the painting stolen by the mafia, Caravaggio painting in 1869 and never given back. Okay, so second meaning. Then, now we just got from 2010, we are just getting the sponsoring for a big movie, a documentary movie to be done with Paolo Benvenuti, an historical movie director who has done movies on the daughter of Puccini, who suffered very much, or on the witches of the Seicento and so on, very, very serious movies. Now we are doing a movie on the burial of St. Lucy. We have recreated all the setting, and we are also studying why Caravaggio represented himself 2 times, moved the mid of the painting exactly in this point, no? On the background. This is done also on the radiography, the reconstruction of all the setting and all the personages painted one on top of the other, and also why in the Sicilian artwork there are specific characteristics. So this is going to come out in a year and a half. Unfortunately, we needed 1,600,000 euros to do it, so it took us a while to be able to find this sponsoring, okay? But every single instrumentation, every single lenses, every single positioning of the mirrors have been historically investigated and reproduced with the same materials, with the same kind of glass that they used in the Seicento. Then we did a conference in Palermo on the damages, pharmacy, medicine, art history, a mix of everything, with the damages that eventually toxic materials that Caravaggio used, because to produce a sort of photographic or photosensible material, he had to use mercury and lead, which are not and silver, which are not exactly nice things we couldn't today. So particularly for the history of medicinal sources, we found all the effects of poisoning from mercury and silver, and we noticed that they produce a greenish color of the skin, which could justify better than malary, which does not produce green color of the skin, the Bacchus, the sick Bacchus, and blue spots in the eyes. And being a pupil of Nina Gregori, the first thing she taught me when I started my PhD in art history with her, she said, if you want to recognize a Caravaggio, look in this part of the eyes, because there is always a little blue stroke. So it was funny too, that what she thought was important for me then for other reasons instead of stylistic attribution. Then the national committees paid a huge research, because all what I'm studying is based on scientific analysis. Okay, so when you find them, silver, tin, and other materials that could be used, no, because you need, they are light materials with low atomic number, so with the normal, regular analysis we do, we don't find them. So we had to tune all our devices to look for light metals. I had the possibility to analyze 4 paintings, 2 of the young period and 2 of the late period. They had to be done on site, so a lot of troubles in doing it. We'll see them later. And the last thing, I just finished it, and it went on air 3 days ago. Now they're sending me a CD. I wasn't in time to bring it here, I'm sorry, but I recorded for Nippon TV, Nexus production, and it's sent on Nippon TV, a program. The program is a series of 20 giants of art movies, are 30 minutes with a weekly series on painters, sculptors, architects of Italy mainly. And I had task of doing the Caravaggio one, so we painted within the camera oscura with the models posing outside, and we impressed the priming with the photosensitive material, and all the experiment came out. So I got a blackening of the prime surface and an artist who was putting lead white on top of it, as I will explain in a second. This is just a sequence of the things I'm doing. And then, obviously, we came out of the camera oscura, and here he finished with the model posing outside. Here he finished the composition. And it didn't come out as a Caravaggio, even if this was a very good artist, okay? Was a little lower as a quality, also due to time restrictions. But obviously, everybody can see that Caravaggio is an artist, photographer, also just by naked eye, because it's an artist who plays with the point of view of the spectator, with the fisheye effect, with light sources, with an in-focus, out-of-focus effect, with chromatic aberrations, distortions, cast shadows, depth of field. Let's start and see. He has been described by the biographer as a scientist and as an experimenter, an idea that was normal for his time. Leonardo too was an artist and an experimenter, scientist, but that has been cancelled by purist movement in the 19th century. Artist must be poet and intellectual, not scientist. Art and science, separation. No? The passion of Caravaggio for the optical phenomena goes back to the early years in the Lombard Venetian entourage, an area that was particularly sensitive to these studies, also because they had highest quality lenses due to Murano, the glass production in Venice. However, it's during the sojourn at Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte House that the intellectual interest for optics develops. The optical system that he uses follows step by step the development of the optical and catoptrical systems used to improve the telescopes. The basic phenomenon of light that passes through the window and projects images was already known since medieval times. Alhazen noticed it, and all the followers in the medieval period. Also Leonardo quotes it. They knew the principle of stenopeg hole. Other writers like Girolamo Cardano, Daniele Barbaro keep talking about projecting things, but careful, because the church did not approve the projection of images, the simulacra produced by optical devices. mainly to obstacle Copernican theories, no? That were destroying the Ptolemaic theories that the church was founded and based upon. But also because they produced these sort of ghosts that they didn't know how to justify. But they were very used, on the contrary, in theater. Remember that Caravaggio lives in the same period of Shakespeare, and Shakespeare needed to make the ghost of the father of Hamlet appear on top of the tower of the castle. No? And these were hydraulic optical systems, Arab-derived, to project simulacra in theater. So very related to theater, very related also to scientific illustration. You had to catch a fruit or a bee in a second, because it was moving or it was rotting. Giovan Battista della Porta also talked a lot about reproduction of images for theatrical uses in the street, to show 12 rings and ask the public which one was the original one. And everybody made mistakes with great laughter of the audience. Or to show in a tent, inside a curtain, a black curtain, the people passing by the street. And Giovan Battista della Porta says, particularly a gypsy reading the good teller to a boy. So really, these treatises are linked to what Caravaggio executed. They quote very similar things. Giovan Battista della Porta was a very serious academic, but from 1570s his writings started to be put at the index, so he was practically censored. So he started writing books like these, Magiae Naturalis sive de Miraculis Rerum Naturalium, in Naples in 1558, but in Italian in 1579, and had a great success, in which he said, I don't know why, I don't know the rules, but look at this, if you do like this, this happens. So he didn't want to pose himself anymore as a university academic faculty person, teaching mathematical laws, but he said there are magic phenomena that appear. And this way he could continue producing his books. In book 17 of his Magiae Naturalis, so on nature and magic, he has a chapter saying how someone who cannot paint can draw the outline of a man or of any other figure, provided that he can only match the colors. And he explains an experience using the stenopeic principle, a concave mirror and a biconvex lens, to project the image and just put the colors. Lombard, Venetian, and Tourage was really sensitive to this. The first projections that they did in the Lombard and Tourage were only with lenses, only with mirrors, and they could just give you an outline shape, no? Contour line of the shape. But in this case, we are projecting really all the image. You see the image while projected. And this is the moment of combination, cut optics, so combining a lens and a mirror, not only lenses, not only mirror. Paolo Pino describes artworks by Giorgione, which were reflected in the mirrors several times in the same painting. The St. George reflected 15 times on the armor, on a glass, on the lake, on the back architecture in marble, and so on. And obviously this started also via a dispute between which of the two main arts, painting or sculptures, could be better in rendering the 3D dimension. Sculpture, obviously, you can turn around, so render it very well. But the painters started saying, we also can give a 3D. Savoldo, with the Gaston de Foix at the Louvre Museum, probably it's in black, has a front, a back, and here, I'm sorry, the slide is slightly cut, but there is also a profile representation of the man. But also Giovanni Bellini before, in 1515, had represented a woman in the mirror projected twice, or Lotto, the tripod portrait of a jeweler. So you see, they were aiming at giving a 3D rendering of the portrayed figure. Now, Caravaggio, you know that for Caravaggio we say he didn't draw, we'll discuss it later. But as we say it also for Giorgione, he didn't draw, and for Titian. So Caravaggio, when he did the San Luigi dei Francesi artworks, there was a big noise, big scandal. So Federico Zuccari, who at that time was the prince of the Accademia di San Luca, was called to see what this crazy man was doing, and he commented, "What is all this rumor?" And looking very carefully, he suggested, "I don't see anything else than Giorgione's thought in Caravaggio works." Giorgione, we know he used optics, it's demonstrated, and particularly in these three philosophers at the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna, these with the X-ray came out to be dark as a skin, so it's probably Alhazen, and anyway, these persons are catching the sunlight and projecting it in a cave, which could be considered a sort of camera obscura. So more than three philosophers, I would call them theoreticians. Huh? Now let's go back to Caravaggio. Who were the main protagonists of his ideas? He, Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte, his patron, from 1595 to the San Luigi dei Francesi artworks, or immediately after. Then he moved to the Mattei house, presumably in 1601. The brother of Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte, Guidobaldo, who was great friend of Galileo. Not only, but Galileo could demonstrate his theory, that is the sun stable and the earth that turns around and not vice versa, thanks to the study of cast shadows on round surfaces that Guidobaldo del Monte had proposed in his De Perspectiva Libris Ex. The son of Guidobaldo studied with Galileo mathematics, and thanks to Guidobaldo and to Francesco Maria, Galileo obtained the mathematical teaching in Padua in 1592. So the four were very, very strongly linked. Not only, but at the beginning of my book, with Susan Grandi, we have done this research of all the persons who are related to the optical field. Giovan Paolo Lomazzo, who writes a book on the science of light, Girolamo Cardano, Fazio Cardano, Titian, Daniele Bardo, and they're all friend portraitist, master pupil, or friend contact, social contact. So this is the entourage of Caravaggio optical phenomenon. Let's skip this because on this I have to do 7-hour explanation or to suggest that philosophically there was a development of a light philosophy, and which saw two main groups of persons, and the two philosophies were extromission and intromission. Extromission means that we all have light inside, and we look at things, we enlighten them, sort of like voodoo eyes, and we perceive the images with light, as the light is also inside the earth and comes out from the earth. This was Fortunio Licetti, the oppositor of Kepler and Galileo. Intromission, intromission is opposite. Galileo and Kepler said light arises from the sun, is reflected on the objects, and we see it. Obviously, today we would say that both theories are okay, because yes, we see reflected light, but if we don't look there, we don't see it. So we are in the middle between extromission and intromission, okay? But this obviously went together to the extent of giving light a physical consistency. Is it light only waves or bodies, photons, what are, it's a corpuscular, non-corpuscular? So really here I need 6 hours. Let's see if Caravaggio could have had connection with Galileo people and with persons interested in optics and in mirrors. Having become blind, could not paint anymore, so he was writing a treatise, dictating a treatise. In 1584 he publishes it. Caravaggio in 1584 is in Peterzano workshop, so he must have heard Peterzano's idea. And he was a theorist of light in contact with Cardano and with Giovan Battista Benedetti, who was a mathematician, friends of Galileo and Guidobaldo. In Rome, he has the patronage with Del Monte, linked to Cardinal Borromeo. Francesco Maria was an alchemist, the cardinal, and he had the house at Porta Pinciana, villa outside the walls, the city walls, where he produced mirrors and glasses, and here he met probably also his brother Guidobaldo and Galileo. Caravaggio sold paintings to Vincenzo Giustiniani. Now, recently, Clovis Whitfield has found the inventory of the Giustiniani mirrors. There are over 300, and he is looking to find them back and possibly make an exhibit on it. He also sold artworks to a Specchiaro who lives at the Macina del Ponte, so in a special place of Rome. He attends the house of Monsignor Paolo Gualdo, who was a friend of the poet Marcio Milesi and of Galileo, and made researches in science, and was considered heretic too in 1611. They were all at the limit of the church. He is hosted, after the Tommasoni murder, by the notary Andrea Ruffetti, whose house was always full of biologists, botanists, and philosophers. And in the house of notary Ruffetti, they were doing scientific illustrations, so they had mirrors and lenses. In Naples, he attends Giovan Battista Manzo, friend of Della Porta, and Nicola Antonio Stigliola, a physician, the most important of the defensor of Galileo in Naples, and Paolo Beni, and also friend of the Accademia degli Svegliati, which also included Tommaso Campanella. In Sicily, he goes around with Vincenzo Mirabella, who is the man who did the first telescope, not Galileo. Vincenzo Mirabelli, with the ideas of Galileo, did it in 1609 in Sicily, asking the crystals from Galileo. So all the person Caravaggio attends in every place where he has been are all Galilean. Probably telescopes were already, or cannocchiali, long glasses, were used also before. Della Porta says, I'm the first one to invent a telescope. He invented the cannocchiale, so one, not really a projecting telescope, but a magnifier, okay? His books were put at the index. Cardinal d'Este helped him, but maybe for certain backgrounds in Leonardo, at least the telescopes used for war purposes, to see in a battle the far enemy arriving, were already present. Let's see what Della Porta describes on Caravaggio. This is a little simplified graphic to understand better what Della Porta says, very simple. He says, put the model on one side, then put a wooden barrier. Make a hole in the wooden barrier, and this is where my limits are, larger finger. Large like this or large like this, which finger? No, so my problem is not to have mathematical 1 meter, 1 centimeter, 20 centimeter distance. It's a little bit empirical, the research I have to do, because of the empirical description of these things. They couldn't be really expressed mathematically. I've done a big hole in order to show you well the path of the rays of light, okay? So then, on the other side of the hole there was a biconvex lens and then a concave mirror. I asked for an almost 30 centimeter large, like a shield, 35 centimeter large, 40 centimeter large concave mirror to do these experiments, and people complain, no, they didn't exist. Yes, they existed, I'll show you. Now, he says, make a hole in the ceiling, or he says, take a little cone of ray, very restricted from top. Caravaggio was quoted in the tribunal for repairing the roof where he had made a hole in the ceiling. Okay, so make a narrow cone of light arrive on the model from top. He projected via the biconvex lens, via the concave mirror, the image on the back, on a canvas situated on the back of the wooden barrier. So he was painting here. Michael Gorman first suggested this system, but he put the mirror exactly parallel to the biconvex lens, and this wouldn't work because you would reproject via the lenses backward and you wouldn't see anything. So the trick is to incline it slightly on a side, and this will produce distortions that we will notice in a second in the artworks of Caravaggio. Obviously, this system included reversing upside down one time and left to right. Left to right, no, see, 2 times upside down, only one left to right. So if you see here, the model has a left arm bent, here he has the right arm bent, because he couldn't correct In order to do the reverse image perfectly, you need 2 biconvex lenses. Then you get, and this couldn't be achieved till 1667, when Kepler, in North Europe, not in Italy, could vivisect the crystalline. Anatomy was another section, another field where a lot of opposition were produced by the church. So in the northern European countries, they were freer to analyze the human body, and in the crystalline, we have 2 biconvex lenses. So we do the right reversing. Now, why did I think that Caravaggio could have used this system in the early stages? Because he projects twice the same model, the same 2 models in the same composition. Bacchus is holding the calyx with the left hand. St. Catherine is keeping the sword head with the left hand. The same model used here in other artworks uses the right hand. In Phyllis, for instance, holds the flower, the portrait of the courtesan Phyllis. So it's not only a matter of using the left hand because he had left-handed models. Okay? The same models are represented other times when he can develop the 2 biconvex lens system using the right hand. What a projection via mirrors and lenses, which were badly polished and forged, they didn't have the magnetic tables that we have today to avoid little imperfection in the lenses. Huh? They were very bad. Have you ever reflected your image in a grandmother mirror? No? You see foggy, you see very contrasted, no? Black and white. You lose all the grays. So they produce an increase in the contrast and a stronger chiaroscuro shading. They produce distortion and aberration in the anatomical foreshortening. Bellori, as a matter of fact, criticizes Caravaggio because he says he does not know how to put the right foreshortened pose in his figures because he likes drawing. Another confirmation about. And he needs a camera obscura for the Della Porta system and a light source coming from above. Let's see, because they told me why the biographers never speak about these systems. They don't. When he talks about Del Monte, Bellori says he painted for this master a music of youth portrait from nature in half figures. A woman with a shirt playing the lute with the notes, the page of music in front, and St. Catherine on her knees leaning on the wheel. The last 2 are still in the same chambers, but they come out of a darkened color, starting already Michele to endarken the darks. A color not as before sweet and with few hues, but all reinforced by very dark, strong darks, using a lot of black to give relief to the bodies. Bellori saying that he never succeeded to take out of the underground rooms his models, and that poor of invention and drawing, with no decorum and no art, he colored all his figures with only one light coming from top and only on one plane without foreshortening. He started with imitating the poor things, looking for the dirty things and the deformities. And then he said, who wanted to do well as Caravaggio needed to have the good nature in front of him. And if it's true that the nature suffers for defects because a man is too big, another one is too small, another too straight, the other one to foreshorten it. It's also true that the nature, good or bad, whatever it is, it's always the master of art that follows nature. Now let's see some of these distortions. If you use a concave mirror, the top part of your image will be elongated and round. And this is what happens in the boy with the basket of fruit of the Borghese Gallery, which I call him an Elvis Presley curl of the hair. No? Correcting it with computer, we were doing it a few years ago, so we did it with simple rotational 90% squeeze effects. It looks much more similar to the one of the concert, to the boy at the concert at the Metropolitan Museum, which on the contrary is projected more with lenses, not concave mirror. We have used a funny word, recycled boys, but look at this. This is correct dimension. They overlap exactly. Only one projected with a lens, the other projected with a concave mirror, okay? And still, literary sources, the description of the studio of Caravaggio, in the painter's room, a uniform light coming from above without reflection, as it could be in a room from a window with the walls painted in black. Thus, having the pale and the dark colors very pale and very dark, this gives relief to the painting, but in a way not natural, not even previously done or thought by any other century or any other ancient artist. He went on so much in his way of painting that he never went out in the sunlight with any of his figures, but he found a way to execute them in the dark air of a closed room, using a light from above, which came down straight on the principal part of the body, leaving the rest in shadow, in order to confer power with a strong pale and dark contrast. Let's see the different systems of projection, which depended very much upon the research and of the development of the research of the telescope, but also by the room available in his studio. At the beginning, he stays on his own in Rome. He has very small lenses. For this phenomenon, you don't need special lenses. The bottom of a glass can be enough. With no foreshortening, also on the back. All the plane is compressed into 20, 30 centimeters. And we know that he did heads for a grosso each, and he did 3 per day. So he produced very quickly. Later on, he started having more depth of field. This is still in the Del Monte period, and he has to do 2 projections to execute this artwork, so he couldn't still obtain one figure. Then he moves to the Mattei, where he has at disposition a much bigger room, much longer, so he can put far the devices from the projecting devices from the models, and he can reach, you see, a big depth, spatial depth. At the end, he succeeds to do artworks doing in the Messina, Sicilian, Maltese, and second Napolitan Séjour. He succeeds to keep one entire figure projected, but he loses a little bit the background. And we know that he, for the resurrection of Lazarus, he did it twice. He did it the first time that he was not happy, so he destroyed it with a knife, and in 3 days he produced the second one, asking the proprietor, the Capuchin monks, for the largest room of the Ospedale Grande, of the big hospital, that had a highly positioned window, he calls it eye, okay, so facing a porch, which was the perfect situation for doing projections. These are some of the first portraits of young boys half figure, with the use of a single biconvex lens of low power and small diameter, and with what Hockney has defined as a multi-projection system, which I totally agree with. So he projected the face, he projected the arm and the grapes, he projected this portion, he projected this portion, then out of the camera obscura he completed the composition. He lead white sketched these things, okay? He worked as a sort of patchwork to compose with projections. Lenses, as I told you, could be just bottom of glasses. We know that the best ones were produced in Florence, in Bruges, or in Venice. The maximum diameter to maintain a good optical quality was 8 to 10 centimeters. But, however, Daniele Barbaro talks about perfect for projection are the lenses of the glasses for old people, for long-sighted, long distance sight, no? Presbya. And this is the Calling of St. Matthew by Caravaggio with an old man with exact lenses perfect for projection, no? For instance. These kind of lenses are reproduced also by Bartolomeo Manfredi, either in the Christ Among the Doctors in Florence and in your Allegory of the Four Seasons here in Dayton. These are lenses of 8 to 10 centimeters of diameter. There are many examples at the Museum of History of Science. However, in the concept of youth, we see that the projected system, in the last figure he executed, becomes a wider projection. All this boy is kept in, almost all in one projection. You see, it's all round, no? And in this case, probably, he could change length, because this painting is dated 1597, and we know that John Dee gave as a gift to Cardinal Del Monte in 1597, early 1597, a first lens coming from England, not available in Italy, 140 diameter, which means 33 centimeters circa. So probably Caravaggio passed from projecting with 8 to 10 centimeter lenses to, in the last personage, having at disposition this one. These are Galileo lenses at the Museum of History of Science, but they are after Caravaggio's death, so I couldn't use this lenses. But I know that John Dee gave to Cardinal Del Monte this typology of lens. This is 140 diameter. He starts with the boy with the basket of fruit. One of the immediately consequent works is the Magdalene Doria in the Doria Pamphili Gallery, which, when we did the X-ray, it came out to be the same boy with the basket of fruit with short hair and the basket of fruit here. You see the leaves here, but falling asleep. Bellori quotes that this painting was changed, altered during the composition. As a matter of fact, he says, first he painted a boy, then he painted a woman with the hair up because she was drying her hair. And then it transformed it in a Magdalene, adding the vase of ointments and the jewels abandoned on the side. Okay? How Caravaggio succeeded to obtain a first sort of projection of the first figure altogether. This is always with a big lens, no? Passing from 8 centimeter to 30 centimeter lens, but also with another device, raising up the point of view of the spectator. So in these ways, he succeeds to obtain a, you see, this too is very round, and particularly the back of the chair curves. If there are photographers here, you know that geometrical perspective is different from optical perspective, and if you do a photography with those cameras, not the digital, maybe not, of 2 cranes on the background, they will bend, so you have to use Photoshop and correct the curving of the lens projection. No? He couldn't. So he represented the curve of the optical perspective produced by the lenses. The spectator point of view always plays a fundamental role in the Caravaggio compositions. The fruit, obviously, sometimes are seen from top down, sometimes are seen at eye level. In the Sapparetemos, it's seen, the fruit is seen from above down, so it gives even more the idea of precarious balance, no? In a sort of fisheye effect. In this particularly, if you were looking at it eye level, you would never see these details. So again, probably he adds, these are the last parts done. The last is the ochre background, but then looking at the sequence of layering of this composition, these fruits here with this leaf, this detail is the last to be executed, because really from eye level you couldn't see. So he adds it again to confer unbalance to the composition. And a lot of things are falling from the tables in Caravaggio painting, no? It's the dictat of the Counter-Reformation is Christ, so uncertainty of Christianity also, of his Christianity in particular. From Phyllis to St. Catherine, again, identified as a courtesan, Phyllis de Menandroni has often been portrayed as a model from Caravaggio. She is also the Judith in his painting and so on. And this shows several distortions here. She's Elvis Presley courtesan, again with the concave mirror. Here no, this is projected with lenses. And particularly important is there is a scoring exactly in the middle of this figure, which shows us when you have to shift the focus. Now, if you cannot obtain an entire image, you have to cut it in two and project the first half and project the second half, the bottom half. He sets the devices and projects the bust. Then the gown is very ample, so he has to put the devices a little closer or a little farther and keep the second and do the second projection. Now, if you see, there is a big difference in size between, because if you go farther, you restrict the image. If you go closer, you expand the image, no? Projecting. So the body is very small, the mantle is very ample, and if you close, try to close, let's go back, this wheel, it will never connect, okay? So he shifted the focus at the wrist size and projected twice. No concave mirror, no big concave mirror. This is Archimedes, 5th century before Christ, using big concave mirrors to combust the ships in the middle of the sea. So don't tell me that they didn't exist at the time of Caravaggio, because they had them from Greek times. Huh? But anyway, concave mirrors could easily be shields, because shields were in bronze, polished, so could act as mirrors. And particularly when they cleaned the Convention of Soul or the Scalchi-Balbi, this painting, they noticed that this figure is reproduced in the inside of the shield. Okay, so he is represented, projected in the shield. And Caravaggio made use of concave and convex mirrors. In the Magdalene, Detroit Convention of the Magdalene, you have a convex mirror. To obtain what already Parmigianino had started, no? Using a barber half-round mirror, if we still go to the barber, no? They turn around us with the concave mirror to see the back of our hair if they are nice or not. And Caravaggio, with 2 concave mirrors, succeeded to obtain a mastery of optical tricks, which is on a convex shield, reproduce Medusa head as if it was concave. Medusa goes back in the background on a convex surface. So this is really the maximum you can obtain. What I was telling you before, he had to move them aside and project laterally, is confirmed by the sentence that every art historian says, every spectator. They go in front of Caravaggio painting and they say, it doesn't work. So you will see people in Caravaggio painting always moving, because it works well if you move aside a little bit. It has what we call side anamorphism due to the moving and of the devices for projecting. They really find the perfect focus, the perfect foreshortening, seen a little bit from the left or from the right side. He emphasizes also scenographical effects with a sort of language of photographers, fisheye effect. So the spectator's point of view varies according to the light sources. In the Vatican deposition, for instance, the stone is seen from above up. The 2 women are seen from top down, otherwise you wouldn't see them, and the 2 men are seen eye level. If we try to hide those 2 parts, the elbow of Nicodemus or Giuseppe Garimatea, depending upon who interprets, will never ever work, will never protrude outward. This this painting works because it has this curved, protruding, convex effect. And not only, but the light sources are coming from this side, and the tension forces all finish into this foot. So he works composing the tension lines opposite to the enter direction of the line forces. So it seems it's a natural thing, but no, it's very well studied. In the calling of St. Matthew, the light, for instance, does not come at all from the window, but from the hole in the ceiling. No? This is a sort of thermographic effect done by coloring differently the shadowy area and the enlightened area. The hole in the ceiling came from the idea of the gnomons. Gnomons were sort of stylus put in the ceiling, and a little eye in the churches, a little hole in the churches. They projected the sunlight on the floor, and looking at the path of the sunlight, you could say in which season you were, in which period you were, and which latitude. So they were invented by the Romans, but they started being installed in 1575 to 78 to 90s. And they gave a very good impression to the artist entering the churches and seeing this ray of light inside the church. Caravaggio was called in trial by Prudencia Bruni, his landlady, in 1605 for the damage he did to the ceiling. He's condemned to pay 1 extra year of rent. He says, I have no money, so they do the inventory of his studio in this moment, and he says, and there is written that he has 11 pieces of glass, not in the kitchen, not between the things for eating, not between the pots, the dishes, and the glasses as bicchieri, huh? But glasses in his studio, so 11 pieces of glass, so I think there were probably more lenses than, and a concave mirror and a shield mirror. He uses, this is St. John beheading in the Co-Cathedral of Malta. This painting is 5 meters by 3 meters. It's a huge art. Or is what Roberto Longhi defined the painting of the century, because it's probably the most beautiful artwork of the Seicento, done with nothing. Nothing, really, very, very little pigment. And there are several light sources in this artwork. The first one that hits the servant comes from left, then the old lady from top, and so on, so on, so on, so on. That means that on top of the painting, in the oratory of the Italian nation in the Co-Cathedral of Malta, before Mattia Preti architectonically restructured this chapel, there was a sort of lantern with 6 little holes, which projected light inside. And this effect is still partially obtained today by another system of lighting, but this is crazy because you enter at different hours of the day, you enter at midday, the light hits from top, and this man is the protagonist. You enter in the afternoon or in the evening, and the persons in jail and St. John the Baptist are enlightened. You enter early in the morning, and this group on the left is enlightened. So it's different artworks at different hours of the day. Clear? With a different protagonist, with different subjects, main subject. And this was due also to the excursions of the light of the sun during the day. Because if I am in the camera obscura working at 9 o'clock in the morning, I have a certain direction of light, I set my devices and I paint and I reproduce. I project and immediately sketch. 1 hour later, the situation of the light has changed, so I have to repose all my devices in a right position, and change my focus, and so on. So he composed at different hours of the day, which also other persons probably interested in optics did. For instance, Van Dyck, in his self-portrait, shows the sunflower, the one that turns the head towards the sun, no? And shows us what he obtained. The maximum an artist could obtain was a golden chain. Titian got from Charles V the golden chain and the Speron d'Oro. Caravaggio got the golden chain for the beheading of the Baptist and 2 slaves. Van Dyck obtained from Charles I the golden chain, and he is probably saying thanks to the sunlight. So thanks to optics, maybe, my proposal. The continuous movement of sunlight imposed this necessity of refocusing the system. As David Stork already noticed, every hour the light situation in the room changes and the artist needs to reposition lenses and mirror. This provoked the dimensional variation of the new area subject to projection, because if you get closer, you magnify. And this is the only thing that could justify why the head in the background is so much bigger than the head in the forefront. Because Caravaggio could not keep all these personages in one projection, so he projected from this nose to this hand, and then he added later, repositioning closer, you see the system, closer, the figure of Christ and this second arm, which does not connect at all with this shoulder. It's totally wrong. These second projections, as you see, are also present distortion due to refocusing with these big feet and small hands, and the body that the torso does not connect very well with the legs, in the martyrdom of St. Matthew. And even more funny, this boy must have been in need of going to, maybe because the pose was also different to hold, like this, But anyway, he started positioning the boy in a way, and when he came back, the positioning was no more the same. No? So the right side of the face is bigger, much bigger, and wider, longer and darker. The left side of the face is smaller, brighter, slightly rotated towards the spectator. So once you have divided, I did it looking at the X-ray, because the brush marks of the forehead, for instance, interrupted here, and then the other overlapped. And I was asking myself, why? So I tried to draw a line dividing it, and I said, oh yes, now I understand it. No? So looking at the technical analysis, I did something that then explained me the optical tricks. This we saw. He projects very often also, maybe, I say from the same scheme. Some art historians are talking about transparent tracing or so on, but the pose of this man is the same pose of this man, same size. The pose of this angel is present, very similar, underneath the martyrdom of St. Matthew in the X-ray. It's a personage he didn't reproduce outside, but in an inner composition. The depth of field, as I told you, is obtained when he can get a bigger room, because it's proportional to the distance you can pose your devices far from the object. And looking at the Supper at Emmaus, London, what is funny is that here on this table you can really see he did separate objects, separate projection for each object at different time of the day. Because look at this. This has a long cast shadow on the right. This has a short cast shadow on the right. This has it on the left. This has a long on the right. So each one of these, a menu of the day, no? At lunch the chicken, later on the wine, and so on. Okay? But each one is done separately. Talking about the connecting the separate projections, he more and more proceeding on and on in life, he puts them in relationship with the source of light. This is the sleeping Cupid at Pitti. The torso is projected with the light and the point of view from above up, and the legs are seen from enlightened from top and with the point of view on top. This boy twists, like Juan Battista Romazzo said, the maximum beauty is obtained with a figure that goes in a torsion. You know, Manierism wanted tortile column figures, no? And said the left leg behind, the right hand in front, the right arm behind, the left hand in front, like, no? A twisting, spinning figure. Romazzo said what Vasari said is beautiful, but it should be a light tortile column. And this is how Caravaggio obtains what Romazzo preached, no? A twisting of light with 2 points of view and with a rotational spin given. He didn't succeed. This originally was a St. John. In the X-ray there is a bamboo can and a lion skin on the legs. Then turned into Amorino. He didn't know Amorino had to be naked. He didn't know how to solve this part. So what doesn't work, a big shadow on top. He corrects his defects. I'm not ruining Caravaggio. He's a master, but he has some tricks. Huh? Oh, excuse me. As I told you, he also, as photographer, he plays with out of focus, in focus. He doesn't have good foreshortening. So, Crowning of Thorns of Vienna, the hand of the soldier that is standing on the balustrade would completely be flattened with the hand of Christ on the back. And they both would have emerged on the same plane. How he does to make the hand of Christ go back? Out of focus, flow effect. Because our eye brings close what is sharp and sinks what is out of focus as a way of perceiving. And he has many of these. Look at the hand, and I mean, which artist would have done Christ's hand so rough, if not one who based his ideas on photographic systems. And also the hand of this Knight of Malta, Martelli, Antonio Martelli, with the rosary, perfectly sharp on top, no? Coming, protruding outward. In the later paintings, there is an inversion of lights and darks. He starts with a uniform and enamel-like composition in the figures and in the background, and then he increases the contrast. Tenebra starts corroding light, the glazes disappear, and the paint becomes clots, becomes rough clots of paintbrush. The brush marks, he alternates in the Neapolitan period, end of Roman, beginning of Neapolitan, very sharp and clear final glazes, still keeping them in the kits, but he starts making old personages with rough brush marks. Titian and Caravaggio have scents that emerge from a dark background. This is a real spiritual thing. I mean, Tenebra is around these people. Inquisition and strong counter-reformation is starting, so you can understand also that it's a problematic time, no? So, huge amount of Tenebra around the figures. This is Caravaggio himself, his portrait. So, the scents emerge from a dark background, which is earth-based, so absorbs light, and becomes the figures become, on the contrary, luminescent, as if they were divine emanation or an ardent flame. The yellow and the red ochres, which absorb light, are now in the preparatory layers, covered by a transparent bitumen glaze, and all these pigments make light move inward, and they are in the background, and suck the light behind. They are executed with a Venetian white, which was a mixture of lead white and barium sulfate, a color that is luminescent or glow in the dark. So they are already light emitting. The director of the Borghese Gallery told me, when we turn off the lights, all the painting of Caravaggio glow in the dark, because he used this light, this barium sulfate in the lead white. The pale impastos often contain sand grains, which make the light vibrate on the sapphire and scatter in many directions. The lead white sketches of the body are covered by transparent glazes of glossy lakes, which contribute to a mirror-like surface effect and a propagation outward of the inner light. So the personages have a glossy, vibrant and reflecting body, especially in penumbra, which are shown against a very dark ground, obscure and absorbing light. As to tell us that God is no more around us, but emanates from inside each person, even the humblest. Caravaggio was a very innovative man who projected into the future in respect to the traditional previous masters. He opened new horizons to artistic creativity, and going back to the terminology of the term phosgrapho, so who draws with light, who could better be identified with this definition other than him? This is part one. Stop. So it's an hour, I know. But 2 slides I would like to show you, because 2 more, I'm sorry. But my idea mainly is that he used cinnabar and silver inside his layers, and inside his priming layers. And when light arrives due to the projection, the part of the priming that is hit by light darkens. And this is demonstrated also by chemical analysis. Okay, so he makes a photosensitive priming that darkens in the area hit by light. You saw when I was projecting the young boy in the camera oscura, there was the highlights of the boy image that became dark. Just putting a little bit of silver and mercury in the priming and seawater. On these parts, he put, this is all the analysis made to demonstrate, he put lead white. On the black, he put lead white and barium sulfate. So he composed by doing a sketch, lead white sketch, patching all the figures. Then he came out. But you must really try this process. This is all the barium sulfate explanation and so on. You must try this process, because in 30 seconds you obtain an image that is really natural. Then you start copying from the person, and the naturality of that person disappears because a mental process starts and you idealize the figure. Okay, so he used scoring to reposition the model the following day. He really projected the image and burned the priming in black and sketched very quickly with lead white on top. This is what I'm demonstrating now. This I don't have time now, unless you watch it. It's another 15 minutes, but I don't have. Yes, they told me to leave you time for questions.
Any questions at all?
Yes.
First of all, thank you very much for your talk. I'm really struck by the very beginning when you were contrasting your works with David Hockney's works. And it struck me that the phrase secret knowledge, maybe you disagree with that a little bit. Maybe this isn't so secret. Would you
Completely
agree with that
agree.
statement?
I completely agree with you now.
All right.
It's not that it's secret knowledge, it's that it has been censored by the following centuries. If we look for it, for instance, the Jesuits, who seem to be the most severe inquisitor of the church, have the best optical treatise in their libraries. And I'm going there every month when I have 2 days to study them, because they collected all the optical information. They were trying to impede these, so in order to impede it, they gathered it. So it's still partially hidden, but it was so well developed at the time of Caravaggio and could circulate in circles that were more related to the Franciscans and the Augustinians, not in the official church circles. But if we find it now, we find it. If we look for them, we find it. Yes. So it was not so secret, not at all. Maybe the biographers could not mention it too much.
I'm just trying to grasp, and you demonstrated at the end, and of the actual painting. Go back to this stop right there. Go back to, yeah, or the other one with the boy on the left. There was the, yes, okay. So are you saying that he painted with silver, what did you say, silver?
Allora, this is all the second part which I didn't have
Okay,
time
no, that's
to
fine, that's
explain.
all right.
No, but I want to do it, excuse me, very quickly.
When he painted it,
See?
he was painting the highlights that were gonna go black? Is that what you're saying? They're gonna
I'm
go
showing
dark
you.
and then he came back over it with white?
I'm showing you in a second. Allora, this is the part I couldn't really explain well. Allora, what I've done, I've taken a normal photography, and with the projection in the camera oscura, with this hole in the ceiling and
Okay.
the sunlight, I found the proper timing to produce on a photographic film
Okay.
this image, which is the opposite of this image.
Got it.
Because where light arrives,
Yeah.
it
It's
strikes
Right.
and
Converted.
photo-oxidizes
Right.
the priming and
Right.
makes a black mark, which I don't know if you can see it, but it's here. It's really here, here, this is the
Okay.
and on this black mark, the artist painted with lead white.
Okay.
It's almost impossible to record because we were in a camera obscura.
Okay.
Now you see it better.
I see.
You see it here, the head and the face, and these parts here.
Okay.
Of
Yeah,
the-
yeah, no, I just
It's
wanted to.
that.
Yep.
If you look at that, you find it there.
Nope.
And this was done by me putting cinnabar red in the priming, rabbit skin glue as it was produced in the past, because I found one artisanally made by the first seller, because that was it's rabbit skin glue, and the rabbit skin is washed out with mercury nitrate in order to get rid of the fur. So the glue also is partially photosensitive because it contains mercury. And then I put silver chloride, in this case, in the priming, because I found it. I did XRF, the resurrection of Lazarus, is fulfilled when we did the XRF. And to do this, excuse me, let's finish this then. So I put in the priming silver and mercury. Then I projected the light and it darkened. In order to stop it for a little bit, I throw a bucket full of seawater, which is what probably he did, what you see there. Because sodium chloride fixes the image for a little bit, the black image. And then on top of it, my artist was executing with lead white the highlights. And this came out as a first sketch. The artist told me, as soon as I finish with the white, I need to put some blacks. Still looking at the projected image. Okay, he put some blacks. And this is what is coming out now with the new infrared reflectography, because we kept saying, no, Caravaggio didn't draw. Now that we have reached, 2 years ago, 2,250 nanometers intensity, so we passed from the near infrared into the medium infrared, we are finding traces of charcoal in Caravaggio. But they are not drawing, they are not charcoal marks. They are charcoal liquid brush areas. So he probably began by sketching lead white and parite and charcoal black with a brush
Were these
to compose.
15 millimeter lenses, 30 millimeter, or I'm sorry, centimeter lenses?
We were using an 8
And
centimeter.
they, okay.
Multiprojecting, because we
Okay.
tried the card shot, and the card shot is a very early work, before the concert. So
Okay.
I wanted to try the very first method.
Gotcha.
And we projected one model per time, and we did the entire composition. And it came out very nice, till the sketch. When he had sketched the 3 in black and white, then he went out and continued copying. But I wanted to continue coloring. Let's see in the second part. Unless you have, if you have other questions, go ahead, so I can use the second part of the slides.
That's great.
Allora, this is what I was looking for, no? Magnesium, silver, mercury, arsenic, in combination with chlorine, sulfur, and iodide, because this is what could produce a photosensitive image. I can leave this PowerPoint if you want, instead of taking pictures. Allora, my idea of photographic process was produced by the XRF that were done in 1980s, because look at this. This is the band, the range of mercury in the Judith and Oloferne Barberini. This is the mercury in all the other paintings of Caravaggio, and it's so present. And then you go, mercury should be cinnabar, it should be only in the red colors.
How old was he when he died?
37,
Okay.
but he had many problems of. Let me show you, because it's funny to say. Allora, what are the, it's a neurotoxic, no? What are the damages to the health that mercury provokes? Nervous breakdown, scarce hearing, difficulty of walking, violent actions, change of personality, trembling, emotional instability, dementia, hallucination, and epilepsy. Everything has been given to Caravaggio. All of these. You can't avoid one, okay? So really, mercury was dangerous. And mercury came from mercury sulfite, no? Which blackens depending upon light, mainly humidity and metals. Animal glue with mercury was used to produce the heads, and Caravaggio has a lot of heads to make them stay up, stronger. You see what I mean? This is the priming, and this is the part on top of the priming that oxidizes. This black layer, in the analysis, in the cross sections of Caravaggio painting, you find it only under the white,
Yeah.
not in all the other areas. If you found it everywhere, I could say, okay, fine, it's a layer of the priming that darkens. But it's only under the white. That means it's a photo-oxidized part of the priming, no? Where light arrived, it darkened it. In the other parts, no. It's all. So these are the 4 paintings I analyzed, full of mercury and some silver, a lot of silver and mercury, huge amount of silver. So he probably moves little by little in his life, the later part of his life, more to silver because he can't suffer mercury anymore. Obviously, we had to do the analysis inside the museums, and we did also UV to make analysis in the areas where there are no retouchings. No? So inside the Galleria Borghese, in the night, me and the diagnoser, and the alarm during the exhibit Caravaggio and Bacon, no? And the alarm was on, and with the alarm on, the lights were on. So we said, we need total darkness. So they said, okay, you take the responsibility. And I signed a paper. For 6 hours, I was inside the Borghese Gallery with the diagnostics with no alarm. You can imagine. That has been the most scary moment of my life. And at a certain point, I collapsed. I just left in the Borghese. Or in the Piemonte della Misericordia in Naples, and they didn't allow us to go higher with the devices, so we had to reach only this part, while it was very important to analyze this part, for instance, because this artwork is probably done during the two Neapolitan sojourn. The first part in 1607-8 and the second in 1610, but we couldn't demonstrate it because they didn't allow us, because there was the alarm and we couldn't go half.
So you were actually doing X-rays?
We have done X-rays, infrared reflectography, UV, and XRF. The XRF was done in order to find the low atomic number elements, fluxing helium in front of the artwork. Because when you go, these two, in total darkness, as Caravaggio. Now I'm used to it. My eye has become like a cat one. We were fluxing helium in front of the artwork because every single little particle of impurity in the air could change and alter our recording. So we needed a totally, completely, you see, this is the helium, which was not easy to bring in the museums for other reasons. It can explode, no? So helium was fluxed in front here, and the XRF was shot to look for tin, aluminum, silver, very low atomic number. This is the sequence, no, of this is the lead white sketch, and so on. Obviously, the idea also that to put barite in the lead white was double useful because it glows in the dark, so in a dark room you can see it better. You can really see the white brush strokes you put, no? So I found barium in all the works, phosphorus in Lazarus, and then mercury, silver and tin, silver major amount, and a huge amount of silver in Lazarus. Barite and other materials, because the journalists, as soon as I proposed this hypothesis, came to me and said, how can Caravaggio use photoluminescent material? They didn't exist at that time.